بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم ما ملأ ابن آدم وعاء شرا من بطن أو كما قال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام. Respected elders, brothers in Islam, inshallah ta'ala, today we will continue with a series of ahadith that we have been explaining over the last few weeks when we have been talking about the different parts of our body and what role they play in our religion. So a fortnight ago we talked about the tongue in Islam and the dangers and the good things that the tongue can indulge in. Last week we talked about the center of the human body, the heart. And inshallah ta'ala today, briefly, we will talk about the stomach in Islam. What Islam has to say about the stomach, about food, about consumption, about drinking as well. For a moment you might think to yourself that such a topic is not necessarily religious. That when it comes to food and water, this is something which falls outside the sphere of religion. This is not to do with ibadah. Islam is about the 5 pillars of Islam. Islam is about zikr and reciting the Holy Quran. But what you will find is that our Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave advice to how to live our lives in the public area, in the private area as well. He gave us advice to increase our health in this world and in the hereafter as well. He wanted us to be physically fit, he wanted us to be spiritually fit as well. Pick up Sahih al-Bukhari for example. You will find that there are individual chapters on Salah, on Zakah, on Hajj, on Jihad, on the Quran. There are also separate chapters called Kitab al-Ashriba, the book of drinks. There are separate chapters called Kitab al-At'ima, the book of food as well. So you see that this is an integral part of Islam as well. Before we do that, and before we talk about Islam's guidance on the stomach, it is perhaps worth reflecting upon our own habits in this current day and age. We have been led to believe and we have been drilled to believe that a person has to have 3 meals a day. That he has to have breakfast, he has to have lunch, he has to have dinner. If he does not have that, then he is an unfit person, he is unhealthy, he will kill himself. Islam doesn't support this theory, nor does it completely refute it. But what Islam does say is that at the time of eating, you should ensure that your calorie intake should reflect your behavior thereafter as well. The more calories you take in and the more food you take in, then it means that your exercise should be just as much as well. Obesity has come about in this country and in the developed world purely because people are eating and eating, but they are not doing anything to burn it off. Look at the hikmah and look at the wisdom of our religion, subhanAllah, that the time that we are expected to eat, in the morning, at the lunch hour, in the evenings, deliberately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also made a salah compulsory at that time as well. So it is a simple form of exercise as well. At Fajr time, at Zuhr time, at Maghrib time, or later at Isha time. Think about the month of Ramadan and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger have told us to recite Salatul Tarawih, which is not easy by any measure. We are standing in the mosque of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for up to an hour at a time. And that after a day of fast, sometimes up to 19 hours of keeping yourself hungry and thirsty. Why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made Salatul Tarawih incumbent upon us during the month of Ramadan and at that particular time? Well, you have just ate, you have just kept yourself hungry and thirsty and you have stuffed yourself basically at Maghrib prayer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to get up and burn some of that calorie off in the form of sajda. If you do not, you will become lethargic, you will become ill, your health will not actually improve during the month of Ramadan, which is the purpose of it. So overall, what Islam says is that 3 meals is okay, but it is only okay if you are doing something to burn off the calories. The problem with this country and indeed the developing world is that snacks are to be found everywhere and in each and every place. This is harmful for you and I. Whenever you walk the street, there are stores available where you can pick up snacks, you can pick up crisps, chocolates, sandwiches. When you are at work, then there are always provisions there. There are sometimes sandwich vans that come to visit places of work as well. The problem with that is that our stomachs, they never get any rest whatsoever. They are continuously digesting food. The digestive system is a very complicated system. And when you take down food, it takes hours sometimes for that to be turned into energy, into protein, into carbohydrates and so forth. It needs time to actually digest that, to actually turn that into energy. But if you keep eating every half an hour and every hour, then the existing food in your stomach has not had time to digest itself. The Prophet ﷺ, he forbade eating upon eating. But in this day and age, we are accustomed to doing that all of the time. A recent survey showed that a typical American, in a day, he has 20 contacts with food. Meaning he will go past 20 places where there is food and water available to him. In the schools, in the universities, at the kiosk, at the train station, at the shopping center, at home. All of this food is available, and the chances are he's going to keep eating it and eating it. The Sufiya Kiram have taught us that you are not animals, you are humans. It is animals who keep their heads down all of the time and eat all day long. Next time you pass a field, next time you are on the motorway and you pass fields and you see cows there, the cows always have their heads down. They never raise their heads. Constantly, whenever you see them, the cows have their head down and they are eating grass and they are eating fodder. They have no other come, they have no other work except to eat all of the time. We are not janwars, we are humans. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger have taught us that you are not grazing animals that always think about food all of the time. Rather that your stomach, it needs time to digest the food as well. You can only do that if you act upon the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam by ensuring that you do not eat food upon food. The other problem that we have in this day and age is that there is no set time for food within the family now. Our ancestors, our fathers, they ensured that within the family there would be a set time for lunch, a set time for dinner, and all of the family would expect to be there at the table or there on the dastarkhan to eat unitedly. Today, unfortunately, this does not happen. If it does, it happens very rarely. One member of the family says that everybody else eats, I am not hungry at the moment. One member of the family says that I am not eating at this moment because I have to go somewhere, I will eat later. Another one says that my football match is on, I'm going to watch the football match, I will eat later. There were different excuses, and what it means that the barakah behind food is all but disappearing. The barakah is to be found when you eat together, when you eat collectively. When you start with the name of Allah and you finish with a dua. Now, rather than facing your parents while you are eating, our youngsters are more accustomed to facing the TV screen or the PlayStation. This is where the barakah of the food has actually gone as well. Another habit that we have also developed is cold water. We insist that cold water is good for us. We think that it quenches our thirst. Our Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam 1,400 years ago pointed out to the dangers of drinking cold water. It is harmful for the body. It is harmful for the throat. It does not help digestion whatsoever. What did Islam say about how to look after your stomach then? Firstly, our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us about the intimacy and the delicacy of this particular part of the body, the dangers of it associated with it as well. The Prophet alayhi salatu wa sallam once described the worst possible container a man could fill. He was explaining to his companions that what is the worst possible container you think a man can fill? Do you think it is a wine glass? Do you think that it is a wallet filled with haram money, with gold and silver? No, our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Ma mala'a ibnu Adama wi'a'an sharran min batan." The son of Adam has never filled a container worse than his own stomach. And why he has actually said that, inshallah ta'ala, we will continue and we will try to explain it to the best of our ability. Our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and we know this very well, he taught us, and this was his own practice first, he taught us to divide your stomachs into 3 parts. One should be reserved for food, one should be equally reserved for water, and the third part should be kept empty. Unfortunately, we fear that we have not ate, we have not consumed anything until we find it difficult to breathe because the food is up to here. And until it becomes difficult for us to move, then we think that we are totally satisfied. This was not the practice of the Messenger sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. In fact, what he taught was, is that be very careful about your food. Remember that 2 is enough for 3. The food that you put down for 3 people should be sufficient for 4. If you eat together and you take the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on it, then certainly you will. Sometimes we even forget to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim at the beginning of our meals. Or Bismillah wa ala barakatillah. What is the problem with that? Psychologically, we forget where this food is coming from now. We forget that it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The end result, we never finish the plate. That we ensure that the food is half in the plate and it ends up in the bin. If we read Bismillah at the beginning and we actually believe in it, then no one would ever indulge in that practice. The problem is that we are forgetting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it comes to eating as well. What you will find is that all of the spiritual masters, all of the great Sufiyai Kiram, all of the great Awliyai Kiram, they themselves, and when it comes to teaching others, one of the first things that they start with their students and with their disciples is hunger. No Sufi was ever fat. No wali was ever obese. They were always very, very careful about their food. They always ensured that hunger was the first point of control. Why? It wasn't because they wanted to create a generation and a nation of anorexic, of bimar people. That was not the purpose behind it. You have to understand the hikmah and wisdom behind controlling hunger in our religion. The whole purpose is, why is so much control and why is so much emphasis given to the stomach? Well, your stomach and hunger is the first impulse and the most important impulse of man. It is the most common shahwat. It is the most common desire, the one that you have 2-3 times a day. It is the most common chahat. It is the biggest greed that you have. What the Sufiyai Kiram have taught, what they have learned from our Master sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, is that because this is the most important shahwat, the most common one, if you can control this, then you can control all other types of shahwat and desires in your life as well. Start with hunger and all of the others will fall into place as well. If you can control your desire for food and water, and you are able to control it well, then you will not have any problems controlling your sexual desires either, or your desire for wealth, or your desire for power, or your desire for dirhams and dinars. The most basic and the most base one is food and water. That is why our Messenger sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, what advice did he give to those people who were young and who were unable to marry, and he gave them advice in order to control their sexual desires. What advice did he give them? He said, keep fast. Keep a roza for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to control your sexual desires. What is the purpose behind that? The purpose behind that is purely that, look, if you can control your food and water, then certainly you can control your sexual desires as well. Imam Kushairi rahmatullahi alayh, a great Sufi scholar, author of the Risala Kushairiyya, he beautifully put it when he talked about the importance of hunger and how to control it and what it leads to. He said, subhanallah, he said that for me to raise my hand from a full plate of food when I am hungry and refuse to eat, it's better for me than to stand the whole night in prayer. It is more better for me as a human, because it shows more constraint. To conclude, our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, miraculously, the companions saw water gush from his blessed fingers. He was never short of water. He miraculously put food in front of him and it made it full of barakah so that thousands could eat from it. He was never short of food, he was never short of water. But he deliberately and intentionally chose hunger. He chose a life of poverty. And there is a good lesson for you and I in that. That as much as possible we should control this base desire of ours. If we can control this base desire of ours, our health will increase, both physical and spiritual. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us good health in this world and in the hereafter. Ameen wa ma alayna illa al-balagh al-mubin. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما والحمد لله على كل حال.